Yes! How did Starship's second orbital flight go? What went wrong? What is the current state of the launch site? Did the deflector survive? And was this even a success? My name is Felix, welcome to What About It? Let's dive right in. Starship updates. It happened! Nearly 7 months after the first Starship's ambitious attempt to reach orbit ended in a rocky tornado, the second Starship launched, surpassing everyone's expectations. Or did it? Let's rewind a bit and see how we got to this point. SpaceX had been ready to launch the stack of Ship 25 and Booster 9 for weeks. There were minor adjustments along the way, but the primary holdup was the much-awaited launch license. The ball really started rolling on November 15th, when the Fish and Wildlife Services released their opinion on Starbase's newly installed Deluge system. The verdict? No significant environmental impact. This document is packed with fascinating details which we'll dive into later. Following this development, the FAA swiftly released its re-evaluation of the 2022 environmental assessment for Starship and subsequently issued the modified launch license. While this license only covered the second launch, it was the green light SpaceX had been waiting for. In response, they announced a 2-hour launch window for November 17th. And did it launch on that day? No. A day before the scheduled attempt during grid fin testing, SpaceX discovered damage to one of the 4 actuators responsible for moving them. This resulted in a scrub to replace the faulty component. Just in case, SpaceX chose to replace not just the damaged actuator, but 2 others as well. Thankfully, the wait for the next attempt wasn't long. A new launch window was set for the 18th, though it was restricted to a brief 20 minutes due to a cruise ship scheduled to enter the area later that day. Excitement was guaranteed. The short duration of that window would only be problematic if there was a serious issue with the vehicle requiring a lengthy hold. On the 18th, the typical procedure for Starship testing was in full swing. Boca Chica Village was evacuated, the road was closed, and the launch pad was cleared of all personnel. Then the orbital tank farm came to life, slowly cooling down all propellant lines. This step is crucial to avoid thermal shock when the fluids are later pushed through at full flow. 2 hours before T-0, SpaceX's flight director gave the green light to begin fueling the prototype. At that point, we were already streaming at Y with almost 1 million people having tuned in. Thank you all so much for watching this together with us. Our first test of the Y live cam setup to come later, by the way. The fueling process started with propellant flow to the Super Heavy booster and shortly after to the ship itself. 35 minutes before the planned liftoff, SpaceX started their live broadcast, providing us with more detailed info about the mission. During the first flight, the primary objective was simply to clear the tower and achieve flight. This should give you the first hint at the question of a successful launch. This time the mission was focused on testing the new hot staging system and collecting as much data as possible. Everything after that was just icing on the cake. This time around, SpaceX also released an official animation showing the new system, but nothing beats the excitement of the real deal. As the countdown progressed, everyone's favorite host, John Innsbrucker, joined the live broadcast. His presence always adds a special touch to these missions. Never change, John, you rock! Before the launch, an interesting detail was shared. This was set to be the first mission where Starlink would be used for video and telemetry transmission from a rocket. As the launch unfolded, it became clear that the video side of things didn't work out. The initial phase of fueling and engine chill went smoothly. Then an excellent view from a camera placed beneath the launch deck showed the engine's thrust vector control system test. It was conducted just 90 seconds before the scheduled launch. For this flight, the Super Heavy booster transitioned to electric actuators for TVC, moving away from the traditional hydraulic pistons. Hydraulic systems rely on fluid movement and are prone to leaks and fires. Not the ideal factor to consider when launching a rocket. In contrast, electric TVC reduces weight and ensures the independence of each engine, meaning a failure in one doesn't impact the other. As the countdown approached the T-40-second mark, a unique aspect of Starship's launch protocol came into play. The design allows for a pause in the countdown, holding up to 30 minutes. This hold can serve various purposes, from monitoring engine temperatures to waiting for the right tank pressure levels. It's a different approach from Falcon 9, where a late countdown halt typically sets the clock back by several minutes. So did the second Starship launch utilize this hold? Yes, it did. Initially, there was concern that boats entering the restricted zone might hold up the countdown, but this was not an issue. The real challenge was low pressure in the upper stage fuel tanks, similar to the situation during the first launch, which also experienced a hold for this reason. However, this is precisely the purpose of having holds in the countdown, to address such issues without any rush. The hold lasted about 2 minutes, after which the countdown resumed, escalating our excitement beyond Mars's orbit. In the final moments before ignition, the Deluge system activated, the Raptor is ignited, and then lift off. The second orbital Starship launch started smoothly, with the rocket clearing the tower at a slight angle, something we also saw during the first flight. This angle might not be entirely intentional, but it could result from slight gimbaling of some engines to ensure that the Starship doesn't collide with the tower. At T+50 seconds, a mission control call-out confirmed that power and telemetry were nominal and everything proceeded as planned. This phase starkly contrasted the inaugural Starship launch: no explosions, no onboard fires, and correct fuel consumption. The clean, clear flame of the rocket was a good indicator of how well this flight was progressing, the largest Mach diamonds ever produced. Let's compare this launch to the 1-minute mark of the first flight to show you just how different this launch was. At that point during the initial attempt, 4 engines had already shut down. The rocket was traveling at 675 kilometers or 420 miles per hour, and the altitude was around 5 kilometers or 3 miles. This time all engines were still operational. The speed reached a remarkable 1156 kilometers or 718 miles per hour, and the altitude was equal to 9 kilometers or 5.6 miles. Almost double the velocity and altitude. Now that is a huge difference, showing just how much things have improved. Following this, one of the flight's critical moments, the point of maximum aerodynamic pressure or max Q, was reached at T+1 minute and 6 seconds. Max Q is a point where the rocket endures the peak mechanical stress, and it's often where any major design flaws would become evident. However, Starship went through that point effortlessly, blasting into the blue skies above SpaceX's starbase. By T+1 minute and 34 seconds, the second Starship had already exceeded the top speed achieved by its predecessor. While the first Starship was beginning to lose control at this stage, the Booster 9 and Ship 25 combo maintained strong and stable flight. At T+2 minutes and 39 seconds, the engines started shutting down in groups of 5, creating a visually stunning pattern. You might be wondering about the reason behind this staggered shutdown approach. One possible explanation is SpaceX preventing a phenomenon known as water hammering or hydraulic shock. The Raptor 2 engine consumes about 650 kilograms or 1,400 pounds of propellant per second. And with 30 engines, that equates to a mass flow of 19,500 kilograms or 43,000 pounds of fuel per second. Let that sink in. Stopping this flow suddenly could create a surge in pressure within the fuel lines, potentially causing massive damage. Shutting down the engines in group likely helps mitigate this risk. It could also be a method to maintain balanced thrust, compensating for any variations in engine shutdown times. After most of the engines were turned off, it was anticipated that the 3 remaining engines would throttle down to 50% of their thrust, as per Elon Musk's tweet. However, as we examined the brightness in the launch footage, we believe that SpaceX kept the engines at their original thrust for unknown reasons. And the most awaited moment after ignition arrived at T+2 minutes and 44 seconds. 3 vacuum-optimized engines ignited, quickly followed by the lighting of 3 atmospheric Raptors. This event marked the first in-flight ignition of all 6 ship engines, a significant milestone for the mission. Most importantly, the hot staging worked. The prototypes separated. Just before the launch, SpaceX also confirmed a crucial detail regarding this maneuver. Turns out that, as suspected, the center engines were moved to avoid firing directly at the protective dome. From that point onwards, things are escalating quickly, so we'll have to analyze the footage nearly frame by frame. Let's do it. The remaining super heavy engines initiated a flip maneuver almost immediately after stage separation. At T plus 2 minutes and 49 seconds post-launch, the booster's engines started reigniting in pairs. During the flip, there is a brief moment visible in the video where all but one of these engines successfully reignite, confirming that the telemetry was correct. Up to this point, the mission was going nearly flawless. However, this is where things began to go south. During the flip maneuver, one of the center engines shut down, signaling that something wasn't right. As Booster 9 continued its boost back maneuver aimed at returning to the Gulf of Mexico, it began losing more engines. By the T plus 2 minutes and 57 seconds mark, 4 engines had been lost, though the remainder continued to fire for another 14 seconds, at which point another engine failure occurred. During the stream, the telemetry wasn't synced with what was happening with the rocket. To ensure we got everything right, we manually synced the two, revealing that when the engine failed, it left a significant plume behind. Only 3 seconds after this incident, another engine failed spectacularly, emitting a large burst. This was quickly followed by yet another engine failure, this time with visible debris flying from the engine section. Starbase, we have a problem. Suddenly, a minor explosion led to the failure of 3 more engines, leaving just one still ignited. However, before we're able to process this rapid sequence of events, the booster exploded. Frame-by-frame analysis suggests that the destruction of the booster was not a natural outcome of the flight, but rather the result of an intentional activation of the flight termination system. FTS is designed to safely terminate a flight by puncturing the rocket's fuel tanks, cutting thrust and getting rid of the propellant. While it was disheartening to witness the booster's detonation, part of me was happy to see that the system worked immediately this time. This should significantly speed up the investigation. The burning question remains: what caused the failure? Given that the Ascent was nearly flawless, the reason is unclear without any official statement. The flip maneuver might have caused fuel sloshing, leading to gas bubbles entering the turbopumps and creating combustion instability. There are other theories that the ship might have decelerated the booster too much, causing fuel sloshing as well. In the best case scenario, this would cause an engine shutdown, but at its worst, it could trigger an engine explosion, which seems to have been the case here. On the other hand, the hot staging appeared to work, and I don't think it was the cause of the super heavy detonation. What are your thoughts? Do you believe the issue lay with the engines or the hot staging? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Regardless of the underlying cause, the FTS was activated and Booster 9 was spread over the Gulf of Mexico, which we know thanks to NOAA weather data shared by Jonathan McDowell. Thank you, Jonathan. Meanwhile, Ship 25 continued to accelerate, with its engines firing without any visible issue. For a while, it seemed that Ship 25 might successfully reach the near-orbit trajectory in one piece. The only minor concern was the difference between methane and oxygen levels in the tanks. At T plus 3 minutes and 30 seconds, Ship 25 crossed the 100-kilometer mark, the internationally recognized boundary of space, officially making Starship a space-capable vehicle. The engine burn then proceeded smoothly for the next 3.5 minutes. However, as the ship approached an altitude of 150 kilometers, a visible plume appeared, and the liquid oxygen levels began to decrease significantly. This could have been anything from an intentional lock stump to a significant failure leading to an oxygen leak. Despite this, all 6 engines continued to perform well, and the prototype's velocity was still increasing. Another plume was observed at T plus 7 minutes and 36 seconds, but the engines seemed to function normally according to telemetry. All changed at T plus 8 minutes and 5 seconds when the largest plume yet appeared, and the Starship stopped gaining speed as the engines seemed to shut down. Initially, there was hope that the prototype had just lost contact with ground stations, but it soon became evident that that final large plume unfortunately was the ship's explosion. SpaceX suspected that the onboard computer automatically triggered the flight termination system, having detected a critical problem with the prototype. At that point, the ship was just a small dot in the sky, so determining what exactly went wrong is nearly impossible. The engine burn was proceeding fine until those unexpected bursts began. The hot staging may have led to a minor fire, or stresses might have ruptured the LOX tank. However, we'll have to wait for an official statement to confirm or deny this. Surprisingly, the story of Ship 25 doesn't end with the official broadcast. Astronomy Live, an epic X account if you're not following it yet, came up with a brilliant idea. He attempted to capture the upper stage from the Florida Keys, and his efforts paid off spectacularly. His footage starts just seconds after the FTS activation, capturing a truly one-in-a-million event. He captured the payload bay section and the nose cone of Ship 25. You can even see the forward flaps. This is incredible footage. I highly recommend checking out his channel for the full stabilized footage. What a catch! This confirms that the FTS was activated, but you might wonder why the nose cone section survived and whether this poses any issues for the FAA. The nose cone likely remained intact because it wasn't pressurized and didn't contain much fuel. The trail you see behind it is likely the propellant escaping from the header tanks. To destroy it, basically the whole thing would have to be wrapped with explosives. The FAA's primary concern with the FTS is to terminate thrust and ensure propellant dispersal before the remains impact the ground. These charges are not designed to obliterate every part of the prototype, so the survival of large pieces like the nose cone likely isn't a big deal. Yet, believe it or not, there is even more to this story. Although the ship didn't survive in one piece, its parts eventually had to re-enter the atmosphere. Jonathan McDowell and NOAA confirmed that the re-entry occurred near Puerto Rico. Incredibly, an ex-user who was there at the time managed to record what seems to be the re-entry of some of this debris. While it's not officially confirmed, the timing and location align with the expected re-entry of the nose cone section. So many coincidences here. It is incredible how you can combine many little pieces of information to get a solid picture of the event. With the FTS activation, SpaceX is now tasked with conducting an investigation closely monitored by the FAA, which will also approve any corrective actions. Let us just hope that the cause of the failure won't be too difficult to determine, allowing for a swift conclusion. A special shout out today goes to our entire team involved in producing our launch stream. Months of preparation and hard work culminated in this event, and we were thrilled to showcase our Y Livecam setup. Now here's a little task for you before we get to the key questions of this launch. YouTube might have unsubscribed you without your knowledge. Not kidding, they seem to do this frequently. These comments aren't fake. Very important task, double check that subscribe button so that you don't miss our updates. While checking, hit the like button and consider becoming a Y supporter for exclusive SpaceX updates. With it, you get access to daily Starbase photo galleries, now including orbital, aerial, and ground photos of SpaceX's progress, and countless other extras on top. No matter how much you decide to give, everyone gets the same supporter content and access. You decide what you want to give. Check our new website as well, launch previews, road closures, the latest weather report, and our multi-stream viewer. Whataboutit.space. The link to our Patreon page and the new website is in the description. Thanks to all the supporters who help fulfill dreams for our team. We can't thank you enough. You rock. So now, as for the launch site, there are key questions to address. Did the deflector system work? Was there any damage? To find these answers, a visit to the site was necessary. Surprisingly, Highway 4 was reopened just 3 hours after the launch, indicating a more promising aftermath than the previous launch. The orbital launch table appears to be in relatively good condition. While some paint was stripped away, the water deflector is intact, and unlike last time, the doors on the deck stayed on. The table's internals, likely sensors, might need to be replaced after enduring the intense heat from the Raptors, but overall the damage seems minimal. The launch tower itself also fared well, showing only minor paint loss. The most significant damage was to the ship quick disconnect, which became slightly misaligned, likely due to a slow retraction during liftoff. Fortunately, this seems like something that can easily be fixed. The most apparent damage from the launch was to the ground support equipment shells at the orbital tank farm, which sustained some dents, likely from the shock waves generated during liftoff. They were already dented from the first launch, and dents are structural weak spots. Fortunately, these are merely protective shells with a considerable gap between them and the actual tanks, so the impact is relatively small. The launch site itself looks surprisingly good. No concrete debris is scattered everywhere, so no cleanup will be needed. When I'm exploring the vast space of the internet, I make sure I'm suited up with Surfshark, the sponsor of today's video, for my protection. Surfshark is an accomplished all-in-one VPN, antivirus, and identity protection service available in over 100 countries. Users like me, who are stuck with internet service providers who force daily recycling of IPs, hate logging on to see websites that are blocked. With Surfshark's reliable VPN, I'm able to regain full access. Simply activate your VPN, adjust your virtual locale, refresh, and there you go. Dive into endless binge-watching sessions. Experience the internet without the worries of asteroid-sized pop-ups hurtling your way or being stalked and spied on by foreign bodies collecting your data. Surfshark's antivirus shields me daily from the invisible unknown. It keeps my device clean and protected so I can explore fearlessly. Suit up with Surfshark and guard yourself against data brokers with Incogni's identity protection. Scrub your data from the internet and set up an alternate ID to keep your personal data private. Surfshark will keep you safe and informed with specialized email alerts for potential data breaches. Get an exclusive Black Friday deal. Head over to surfshark.deal/Felix and enter promo code Felix to get up to 6 additional months for free. Surfshark, surf with your own set of rules. The deflector system functioned perfectly despite so many skeptics doubting its ability to stop the 33 Raptor engines. Finally, the Fish and Wildlife Service's report on the Deluge system offers some interesting insights. The tanks supplying the Deluge can hold up to 1.3 million liters or 358,000 gallons of water. This is enough for 2 launches, each consuming a maximum of 500,000 liters or 132,000 gallons of water. The system is pressurized by nitrogen gas at an impressive 3000 psi. Additionally, during a launch, it is estimated that up to 92% of the used water will vaporize. Retention ponds collect the remaining fluid and it can be reused after passing environmental tests. Notably, each launch is expected to erode about 86 kilograms or 190 pounds of steel from the plate. While this might seem minor relative to the sheer size of the deflector, it shows that periodic maintenance will be necessary. Finally, a static fire test of a booster consumes about 270,000 liters or 72,000 gallons of water, and SpaceX is allowed to use the Deluge up to 30 times a year. And if you're wondering what my estimate on the launch date of IFT3 is, given the current state of the launch site, it wouldn't be surprising to see SpaceX roll out Booster 10 and Ship 28 in the next couple of weeks, potentially gearing up for IFT3 in the first quarter of 2024. That's it for today. Remember to smash that like button, subscribe for more awesome content. This is what fuels the algorithm and helps us immensely. Check out our epic shirts in your favorite Space Nerd store. A link is in the description. And if you want to train your space IQ even further, watch this video next to continue your journey. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you again in the next episode. However, quiz disconnect. Sick. Disheartening.